Let's talk to Charles Parton, former diplomat to Hong Kong and China, because the big story this morning on an awful lot of the front pages still is the business with the Duke of York, Prince Andrew. Front page of the Times this morning, the Duke urged to stay out of sight for Christmas. He's been called to do the decent thing after a spying scandal. Because just as the Duke of York, Prince Andrew, couldn't get any more embarrassing, it turns out that he had a long-standing friendship with a bloke from China who was a spy. Known only as H6. His name may come out later on in the day because he may be named in the Houses of Parliament. Let's find out from Charles what he knows about all this. Charles, very good morning to you.
Morning.
So, I suppose we all know that China is a country which has various, shall we say, moving parts, and they probably put people of influence into various places whenever they can, and we've seen a few examples of it. What do you make of this particular story and this particular individual?
I think in this particular case, it's actually a little bit exaggerated. I don't think the damage done by H6 is really justifying the sort of headlines it's getting. And it doesn't say a great deal of the Chinese ability to choose a royal to front for them that they chose Prince Andrew. What it is important is that it actually, I mean, Prince Andrew in a sense has done us a favour because he's brought up into the public eye the fact that China is, as a hostile power, trying to control our politics. And so, some of your earlier speakers, I think, have been talking about the need for this foreign interests registration scheme.
Yeah.
That's right. So, yes, it's a good warning that we should be upping our protection of our own state.
I mean, are they trying to influence our politics or control it, or are they just trying to kind of find out what it is that we're up to? And I mean, I take your point about Prince Andrew. He's hardly at the centre of anything. However, he's an easily corruptible individual, it seems to me, and therefore quite a good target for a spy.
Well, one of the things that was mentioned in the connection with Prince Andrew was the possibility of setting up a think tank, and think tanks advise governments. Yeah. So if you've got a think tank that is funded by the Chinese and is putting out possibly a slightly pro-Chinese or even a very pro-Chinese line, patronised with the patronage of a royal, that is not in essence a good thing. But yes, of course the Chinese are trying to change the politics and the policies of many countries around the world, and not least ours. This is part of the what they call the United Front strategy, which is to identify the main enemy, which is the United States, and move allies of the Americans away from pro-America to a neutral position, and those who are neutral to a pro-China position.
Right.
So, yes, they put a lot of effort into it. I mean, look how earlier there was a scandal, if you like, about a Labour MP, Barry Gardiner, who was Shadow Trade Secretary, who received £500,000 of Beijing's money through Christine Lee. That's a case that's subject to a lawsuit at the moment, I understand.
Right. And he denies that he was ever influenced in any way, shape or form. But, on the face of it, you see somebody in receipt of money from what appears to be a foreign entity, and it doesn't look great, apart from anything else.
It doesn't, and you have to ask why the Chinese would bother to spend these large amounts of money, put this large amounts of effort, if they thought that there was no return for it. So, yes, I think it is something that we really need to be protecting ourselves against, while at the same time, of course, we've got to trade with China, investment where it's appropriate, and often some of it isn't, because it's science and technologies which we really shouldn't be using, allowing to help their military or their suppression regime. But where in other areas like global health or climate change, yeah, sure, we should be working as close as we can with the Chinese, but not at the expense of our economic or national security.
No. And I was slightly concerned, as I'm sure you would be, when I saw a story at the weekend that said MI5 are now looking into the relationship that Prince Andrew had with this guy. Surely he should be getting clearance on anybody that he has any close relationships with before he has the relationship, shouldn't he?
Well, I think the big questions, first of all, about his own judgment, but maybe he's not a China expert, but that's, in a sense, what his advisors are for. And if his advisors aren't China experts, they know where to find them.
Right.
And royals in the past have done that. So,
but what I'm saying is, don't they have a sort of clearance procedure? If he's going to be in close contact with somebody who's going to invite into the bosom of the royal family, if you like, albeit that you say he's not, necessarily plugged into, the king, still, you know, the guy was hanging around in Windsor. There was some suggestion that that Andrew had set up this think tank and used Windsor as an address for it. You know, I mean, it seems to me that MI5 should have been all over it before it came out in the papers.
Well, first of all, I think MI5's got very limited resources, but secondly,
that's a bit worrying, isn't it?
Possibly, but I don't think MI5 is going to spend its time surveying the royals and watching who they're in touch with. I mean, it should because you don't survey any more than you survey politicians. You look at the other end of it, and indeed that's what they did. They've obviously picked up H6 and seen his contacts. Right. We don't know why he was stopped at the ports, but it wouldn't have been random. There would have been information which led them to do it. Right. And so they've unearthed it, but they can't spend their time listening into Andrew's communications.
Well, yeah, but you say that, but on the other hand, there's not very many members of the royal family to keep an eye on, are there? I mean, couldn't they just keep an eye on him?
Well, where do you stop? I mean, do you then start looking at every single politician's influential politician?
But I mean, no, but if you were looking just at the royal family, there's only, half a dozen of them.
Yes, but Prince Andrew is frankly, not a great threat to the security of the realm. And I think in this particular case, MI5 has done its job, picked up what looked like something dodgy and has cauterized it.
Possibly so. But, there may be others that he's been talking to. It seems to me that, if you're going to be, boxing off certain, what you might regard as influential individuals, surely somebody in the royal family is an influential individual no matter what.
Yeah, and I think that's... I don't know, but one would imagine that the security authorities, MI5 and others, do have links with the royal family. And if there's anything that comes... that's worrying, it's up to the royal family to talk about it and get advice on it.
Are you surprised that this guy managed to get his way into sort of meetings with two prime ministers, Theresa May and David Cameron?
No, not at all. I mean, you see what happens. You'll see. I mean, the Tory party frequently has fundraisers. You can buy tables at that, and you can't control who's at that table. And of course,
why can't you? Again, sorry, I mean, what are MI5 doing? Why wouldn't you go, there's a Chinese guy who seems to have a lot of money, he's bought a table, should we not check him out? I mean, that's what I would do.
Yes, but there wouldn't necessarily be a Chinese person who's bought the table. It would be a British citizen who's helping the Chinese, and you don't know who's on the guest list. And given that there would be a number of these occasions...
Well, let me put it this way. I'm going to Parliament for a party this week, right? I'm pretty sure that somebody would have made sure that I'm not going to be a person of, of bad interest, shall we say, walking into the Houses of Parliament. Somebody would have checked me out, I would have thought.
I think you have a somewhat over-enlarged sense of the powers of surveillance.
Really? I mean, I had a White House press pass when I worked in America, right? I didn't get that without being cleared by the FBI.
True. If you have a pass to the House of Commons, then you will be looked at. But if you're just, as you were saying, going for a party, there are thousands of people going to the House of Commons every day. It's open, it's free. So they cannot possibly check every single person's background.
They can't, but it seems as though in certain circumstances they should do a bit more. What about the general kind of consensus about the government's policies with Xi Jinping and how close Britain is to China? Because I know that Ian Duncan Smith is particularly vocal about this. He's one of the people who's been, sort of at the rough end of Chinese sanctions. What do you make of their policy right now?
Well, I don't think there is a policy right now. I mean, certainly they haven't said what it is. What they've said is that they're going to do a China audit, and we don't know when that will finish, but likely sort of end of January time, maybe a bit later. And then they will produce China policy or strategy at some stage, probably in the spring. But springs are very elastic. That could be as late as June, July, and probably is. So we really don't know what a coherent policy is. And if one criticises the government, and I frequently do for its China work, it is that they don't have a policy. I mean, it's not as though China has suddenly arisen since the July election. China and its rise has been going on for many years. So you would hope that the Labour government and its foreign policy advisors would have thought about this long before they came to power and be ready with...
Well, you could say that about almost every aspect of their policies on everything, really, couldn't you? I mean, one thing I do know is that when he met up with President Xi in Brazil, I think it was at G7 or a G20 or something, after the conversation, President Xi decided to lock up a load more people in Hong Kong.
Well, they've been doing that for years, and yes, we should rightly be speaking out about that. And Prime Minister did indeed talk about that and Xinjiang and other atrocities that the Chinese.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, after talking to him about it, he went and locked up more people.
Well, I mean, there's locking him up all the time. So whoever talks to Xi Jinping, you could say then the next day they locked up more people. That is so.
Yes. I just thought the two things might be connected. Anyway, Charles, good to talk to you. Thank you very much. Charles Parton, former diplomat to Hong Kong and China.